I didn't lose her in a single moment. There were no dramatic goodbyes at the train station, no slammed doors, no final arguments that echoed through empty rooms. What happened between us was way quieter than that, and somehow far more devastating. She slipped through my hands in pieces, day by day, until one morning I woke up and realized the space beside me wasn't just empty, it had learned how to stay that way. When I first met her, she felt like a pause in a life that never slowed down. The world seemed to exhale when she was near. She had a way of listening that made you feel like your words were worth collecting, like each one mattered. When she smiled, it wasn't performative, it was honest, unguarded, the kind that made you want to just be better, to deserve seeing it. I didn't fall for her once. I fell gradually, in the way that she said my name, in how she noticed small things others ignored, and how she made ordinary moments feel intentional. We built something soft and steady. Love for us lived in routines, late night conversations that drifted into silence without discomfort, inside jokes that didn't need explanations, the comfort of knowing someone would be there, not because they had to be, but because they chose to be. I thought this kind of love was unbreakable because it wasn't loud. I thought stability meant safety. What I didn't understand was that love, no matter how gentle, still needs direction. She had dreams. She spoke carefully at first, as if afraid of overwhelming me. She talked about growth, about building a life that felt purposeful, about wanting a partner who would walk forward with her instead of standing still beside her. I nodded, I agreed, I told her someday like it was a promise instead of a delay. I thought time was neutral, that waiting couldn't hurt us if we loved each other enough. But waiting was hurting her. I stayed where I was, convinced that consistency was commitment. I didn't see that my stillness felt like indifference to someone who was ready to move. When she asked for reassurance, I gave logic. When she asked for clarity, I gave comfort. I kept assuming she would understand my silence, and that she would read the feelings I never put into words. She tried to meet me where I was. She softened her expectations, shrank her needs, and told herself love meant patience. I watched her do it and told myself that meant we were strong. I didn't realize she was slowly learning how to live without leaning on me. The first cracks appeared in small ways. Conversations ended sooner. Her laugh came a second later than it used to. She stopped sharing every thought, choosing instead to keep some things to herself. I noticed, but I convinced myself it was just a phase, just stress, just life. I was always good at explaining things away, especially when the truth required action. There were moments, clear, unmistakable moments, when I could have changed everything. Nights when she looked at me with hope and uncertainty intertwined, waiting for me to say something definitive, something brave. I felt it rising in my chest every time, the words pressing against my ribs, and every time fear won. Fear of commitment, fear of failure, fear of not being enough once promises were spoken out loud. So I stayed quiet. Love doesn't always end in anger. Sometimes it ends in exhaustion. By the time she had told me she was leaving, she had already grieved us. I could hear it in her voice, calm, steady, resolved. She wasn't asking anymore. She was informing me. She said that she loved me, and I believed her. But love had stopped being enough to justify staying. She needed a life that moved forward, and I was standing in that doorway, unsure whether to step through. I wanted to beg her to stay. I wanted to promise everything I had been too afraid to offer before. But I understood. Finally, that promises made in panic are not the same promises made in intention. She deserved more than that last-minute courage. So, I let her go. That decision follows me everywhere. In the years since, I've learned that absence is not empty, it's heavy. It fills rooms, follows you into new relationships, sits quietly beside you during moments of happiness. I carry her in the way I hesitate now, in the way I overreact, in the way I finally understand what it means to fully show up. I replay our memories not because I want to go back, but because I want to remember who I was before I knew regret so intimately. I wonder what our life could have been if I had spoken sooner, chosen braver, trusted love instead of protecting myself from it. Sometimes I hear that she's doing well, that she built a life once described to me in careful, hopeful sentences. I'm glad. Loving someone, I've learned, sometimes means accepting that your role in the story was never meant to be permanent. Letting her get away wasn't an accident. It was a series of choices I didn't know I was making at the time. And that's the hardest part. Knowing I wasn't cruel or careless, just afraid. Knowing that fear, left unchecked, can cost you everything that you're trying to protect. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's one I now carry forward like a quiet vow. When love asks for courage, answer it. When someone offers you their future, don't respond with someday. And when you find someone who sees you clearly and chooses you anyway, don't make them wait until they learn how not to need you. Some people leave to find themselves. Others leave so you can finally find the parts of yourself you were scared to face. And now when I think of her, the memories no longer rush at me all at once. They arrive slowly, thoughtfully, like they're giving me time to breathe. I think about the version of myself she met, the one who hadn't yet learned how heavy unspoken words could become. I think about how patient she was with my growing pains, how she believed in me when I hid from my own potential. She loved me not for who I was becoming, but for who I already was. And that kind of love is rare. Losing it didn't just change my life, it changed how I understand connection, commitment, and what it truly means to show up for another human being. There are nights when I imagine alternate timelines, not out of obsession, but out of curiosity. In one of them, I speak sooner. In another, I take her hand and step forward without needing every outcome explained. I imagine mundane things, sharing mornings, arguing over paint colors, building traditions that would have meant nothing to anyone else, but everything to us. These imagined lives don't haunt me the way they once did. They humble me. They remind me that futures aren't lost all at once. They're surrendered slowly, when we choose comfort over courage. What hurts the most is that she found happiness elsewhere. It's that she had to leave in order to find it. I was the safe space that became too small, the familiar that refused to evolve. Loving her taught me that being a good person is not the same as being a good partner. You can love deeply and still fail someone. You can mean well and still cause harm. Intentions don't outweigh impact, and love doesn't excuse inaction. Over time, I stopped blaming fear alone and began taking responsibility. I started asking myself harder questions. Why I equated vulnerability with weakness, why I thought commitment meant losing myself instead of growing into someone stronger. I learned that silence can be a form of selfishness, that withholding certainty is something more damaging than making the wrong choice. These realizations didn't come easily. They arrived after long periods of loneliness, reflection, and learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. I've loved since her, but not the same way. Every new connection carries a quiet awareness, a deeper attentiveness. I listen more closely now. I speak sooner. I don't wait for the perfect moment because I know that perfect moments are built, not discovered. When someone opens their heart to me, I treat it with the care that it deserves, aware of how fragile trust can be when it's left unanswered. Still, there are moments, unexpected, uninvited, when she crosses my mind. Not as someone I want back, but as someone who shaped me. She exists in the pauses between thoughts, in the restraint I've learned, in the courage that I'm practicing. Some people are chapters you wish had been longer. Others are the turning point that makes the rest of the story possible. She was both. Letting her get away will always be a quiet ache, not a wound that bleeds, but a scar that reminds me where I learned the most important lessons. And if love ever finds me again, in that same profound way, I won't confuse patience with absence or fear with wisdom. I will choose to step forward, even when my voice shakes, even when certainty isn't guaranteed. Because I now know some loves are meant to last a lifetime, and some are meant to teach you how to love better the next time.